thank you very much for the kind introduction, Ben. Absolutely, I really appreciate the collaborative approach. A lot of us have been working in and around Mexico for a long time, and so it's good that we can bounce ideas and kind of talk each other's districts up, because that's really what we're all doing. We're trying to acquire and put together large mineral districts and then develop the systems that are in there, and we've had a lot of success doing that with our various teams here. And a lot of them are at the Red Cloud presentation. A lot of them are in PDAC, so do come up and say hello, because we will chat your ear off about this. Forward-looking statements, we'll be making those, and I'll continue to make those for the rest of my career, and it's very fortunate that we get to make those, because they are very interesting projects and very interesting things that we're finding. So, like Ben, like Jim, like most companies that are working in Mexico that do have a timeline of working in Mexico, we do have multiple assets, and that comes from a criteria of selection, but also comes from opportunity to advance things, but de-risk things within the company. We have two projects right now. One is in central Mexico, as Ben said, in Zacatecas State, almost the dead center of Mexico. It's one of the world's most important silver mining jurisdictions. And then we have our Topal asset, which right now is actually in litigation over a fraudulent title transfer, which I can talk about a little bit, but we're just still kind of moving that along right now. We do believe that that is going to work out favorably for us, and that has been a bit of a headache, and we've been put in the penalty box for that, of course. So, Defiance, what's the opportunity with Defiance? We have a robust resource base. Between our two assets, we have a large silver resource, we have a large gold resource, we have a large copper resource, and we have exploration potential to build those out. We can demonstrate that very clearly with our San Nicasio asset, our Veta Grande vein system asset, on how we intend to grow that resource to a level that you would see another company take into production. But as well, with that exploration potential does mean that we have a lifeline of exploration targets, and we continue to build those out by acquiring new properties, by acquiring new licenses, and then building those through our pipeline of exploration, kind of build out our targeting methodologies. A team of people that have been doing this for a long time, over 100 years of cumulative experience working in Mexico, 200 years when you include the directors of capital markets and mining experience. And we're all trying to do it for the same thing, take these through M&A and to mine development. At the end of the day, we do want to take these projects and turn them into mines. Strong leverage to precious metal prices. That is a bit of a cliche for a precious metal company to say that, but every $250 movement in the price of gold adds $100 million to the post-tax NPV of our Topal asset. So it does move the needle when you see that gold price and copper price move. And then with the leverage to precious metal prices, of course, is the Zacatecas resource upside, which is really important given the infrastructure that's in place in Zacatecas. Anytime you see that silver price move, you get a lot more people interested in your asset with what is available in that district in terms of logistics. About 35% of the company is held by insiders management. Large shareholder is two funds owned by the CEO. They own about just over 20% of the company. Insiders own about 5%, and 10% is held by key friends and families. So tightly held, very philosophically aligned with our shareholders, and that helps us make pretty dynamic decisions in what we're going to do to benefit the shareholder. And at the end of the day, that's who we're working for, is the shareholders of this company. And we're drilling. We're drilling right now. We've got about 20,000 meters of drilling that we've done the last couple of years on this asset, and we've got about a 90% hit ratio with the drill on our Zacatecas project. So good value for what we're doing with, or good value for the shareholders, but good value for us with drilling. We continue to put out results in the market, as you can see with our share price, doesn't really appreciate that. About 220 million shares outstanding, about $8 million cash in the bank, gives us 12 months of runway, so we've got a little bit of flexibility on what we can do with our assets or what we can do with our exploration. Pretty tight, pretty easy share structure. Like I said, about management's insiders about 35%, management, insiders and institutions about 35% of the company. Trades anywhere from 250 to 500,000 shares a day. Volume's pretty good. That's been a big push for us, is get the market liquidity up so that you can vote with your feet with the company. We want people to be able to demonstrate that. And as you can see, our share price has been long suffering over the last year. We're trading at about our COVID lows here. So we did have a big climb up, but $220 million market cap, dropped off, came back up. That was a peak. That's when we financed our last financing. And we've been hanging on to that money since then, watching the market deteriorate. Throughout this period of time, we've put out some of the biggest and best drill holes in the Zacatecas district in the last 20 years. So it's been kind of disheartening for us as an exploration team to put out these results and then have the share price get cut in half after we put them out. We made a new discovery on the Lucita property. Share price got cut in half again there. So I think we're just kind of like rising tide lifts all boats. See that with a lot of guys in the room. Very similar share price, very similar, I guess, chart for everybody. And we hope that changes, but we can't do much with the market speaks for us. So. Zacatecas. As Ben said, we're just southeast of Durango. Durango is one of the principal mining states in Mexico, but Zacatecas state is the largest silver producing state in Mexico. The bulk of that is coming out of the Fresnillo deposit, which is the world's largest primary silver mining complex. We're about 25 kilometers from that, 40 kilometers on the south, 40 kilometers on the southeast part of our asset, 25 kilometers on the northern part of our asset. We have an option to acquire 100% ownership, or we outright own it, and the only property in here that we don't have an option to repurchase the NSR is the Lucita property from Pan American Silver. So our San Nicasio property, that's the legacy asset. That's got the Veta Grande vein. That's where we're working at updating the resource. That's one of the most well-known vein systems in Mexico. The north of that's our Lucita property, and then we have what we purchased off Mag Silver, which is the Lagartos property, which is on strike with the Malanoche vein system, which Cozamin's in production. Zacatecas, much like Coneto, and a sort of different flavor to it, has been in production for almost 500 years, so it's got a very epic mining history. Just to throw around some more conquistadors' names, Cortez's son-in-law found this vein system. So Steve Cortez, one of the first conquistadors to come through Mexico. His son probably tripped on the Veta Grande vein, and then they took that into production. And so we benefit from having some of the best mining infrastructure in the world. We have an international airport, 25 kilometers, or 25-minute drive from the asset. You could bike to the project from there. We've got high-tension power to the property, got paved roads on site. There's 25,000 tons of milling capacity within 50 kilometers of this asset. Just up the road is Fresnillo and Mag Silver's Juanicipio project. That's got a 6,000 ton per day mill within the Fresnillo complex, and Mag Silver is building another 6,000 ton per day mill. Our next door asset is Capstone's Cozamin mine. Cozamin's a 3,800 ton per day underground copper silver mine. They're doubling throughput right now. The mill footings are in for a new mill building. And so I like to say that, we have the proof of concept that the mineral systems are there, but the proof of concept that you can mine them is there, and that really helps us with, what can we do on the lifeline of the projects. So this is a 1 billion ounce historic silver camp. Gross metal value of that puts it in one of the most important silver mining jurisdictions, one of the most important mining jurisdictions in the world, and we like to think of it as Fresnillo from the 1960s. So as I said, Fresnillo, just up the road, largest silver mining jurisdiction, largest silver mining complex in the world. Fresnillo from the 1960s was a bit of a different story. Up until that time, Zacatecas had produced more silver. Up until, in the mid-2000s, Zacatecas had produced more silver than the Fresnillo district. But in the 1960s, Fresnillo was out of ore. Why we like to say it's from, similar to Fresnillo, same crustal position, similar types of rocks, very similar geology, but also a very similar lifeline of exploration. So in the 1960s, Fresnillo was out of ore. They were actually looking for the Veta Grande. They were looking to mine the Veta Grande. They did do some mining there to fill their mill. But then they found Santo Niño, which was 3 meters of 1,000 grams silver, 1.6 grams gold, and about 1% combined base metals. That's a very important number because we've drilled that number across the board throughout the last 2 years, showing you that we do have these grades that work in the mill, that work in the geology of the area, and work in the infrastructure of the area, and the market has not appreciated that. But that turned the lights back on, and that also took everybody out of the Zacatecas district. So for us, that was like, okay, so how do we, move this forward? How do we take what, we know the Veta Grande, and then what do we do to actually build out what could be another, Fresnillo district or another large silver mining district in Mexico? And that meant ground consolidation. That meant putting together as much of the district as possible, and that's what we did. So we acquired the Malanoche property, or Lagartos property here from Mag Silver, and then in 2021 we acquired Pan American Zacatecas District Holdings, and that made us the second largest landholder in the district, and we control about a quarter of the historic Zacatecas district now. So as I said, you look across what we've been doing, and one of the things that was really encouraging for us outside of the resource area was acquiring Pan American's ground. So we have one payment left on this. We'll have 100% ownership. As I said, they retain the 2% NSR, and the first holes that went into this property came back with 3 kilograms per ton silver, 1,600 grams per ton silver. Some of them were mineable widths, but it's important to remember that all we did was step across the vein system, which when we identified the Pan American ground was a 4-kilometer vein system called El Palenque, and it's just north, about 3 kilometers away north of our resource area on Veta Grande, which is down here. First couple holes in there is 3 meters of 500 grams per ton silver, 3 meters of 700 grams per ton silver. But what was intriguing for us was that Pan American owned this since the 1980s, which is quite a long time for a foreign company to own licenses in Mexico. These were pre-NAFTA Mexico, of course. They owned this since the 1980s. They had a handful of gram samples across this vein system, and they'd never done a drill hole, mostly because of access to property. So in part of your permitting process here, you have to have a surface rights agreement with the various landowners of the asset. So you have ejidos, or you have fraccionamentos, you have private public ownership, or you have, you own it yourself. We've been working with that ejido for over 10 years, and so we had a good agreement, a good arrangement with them, and they were pretty keen to have us drill it. So, we had drill permits on this thing within 6 months, and then we drilled 12 holes across the district, made 3,000 gram per ton drill hole up in the eastern half of the district, and in the western half of the district, we put out a really nice drill hole. It's about 50 meters wide of, anything up to 700 grams per ton silver, but the whole thing graded about 50 grams per ton silver, so 50 to 70 grams per ton silver. So showing you that there's a lot of exploration potential in this district, and that when you do put drill holes into it and do good geology, you can actually come up with some pretty good results. In the north of the district, we have the Panuco land package, which is quite important because the Panuco deposit is being drilled by Zacatecas Silver. They're drilling right up to our property boundary there. This whole vein system here called Tres Cruces, that represents one of the best undrilled targets in the Zacatecas district. It's a polymetallic target that grades up to 1,000 grams per ton silver at surface, and so we're just working through getting the surface rights there. As I'm kind of rambling along here and talking about this, what I'm trying to show you guys is that, this unconsolidated district, this area that has never really seen modern exploration, we have 50 square kilometers. We're 40 kilometers away from the world's largest primary silver mining complex. So if you think about the distances, think about the Carlin Trend, think about some of these other global mining camps, you wouldn't have these undrilled targets in there. It's like walking up to a world-class district and then putting your first holes into it and hitting, 10 times the cutoff grade, 20 times, 30 times the cutoff grade of your current resource estimate. So, speaking of the resource estimate, here's the Veta Grande. Veta Grande is one of the most well-known vein systems in Mexico. It's a 150 million ounce historical producer. This was one of the most important mines of the Spanish Empire. It was found in the 1500s. It's been more or less in continuous production since then. We've got a small starter resource on it. We've been drilling, well below that resource estimate, looking to update it in the next few months, or the next year, I should say. Our next door neighbors are the Capstone's Cozamin mine. It's a 3,800 ton per day mine. It's got power on site. It's got water on site. You can drive to it on a paved road. There's open pit mines all over the place. Our next door neighbor has a mill. We're right next door to Cozamin. Its infrastructure is phenomenal. Lifeline, the history of it is amazing, and it's, of course, really ripe to build out the resource estimate. I think that's what our plan has been and what we've been doing. So resources tabled to about this elevation here. And as you can see, we've almost tripled the vertical profile of mineralization there, drilling wide widths well above the cutoff grade. I can't rattle off these numbers right now because I don't have my glasses on me, so I can't see them. But we are hitting, well below the resource estimate, up to kilogram per ton material. And our resource estimate's tabled at about 100 grams per ton silver. So showing that we're still in a very active system, polyphase mineralization, just showing that these long-lived systems, much like the Fresnillo camp, they're following these, preferred structures, and they're just pulsing through here and bringing you various styles of mineralization. And Ben will appreciate this one as well. The geology of Mexico does present some very unique epithermal characteristics. So you don't have this boilerplate, this is what's happening here in Mexico, this is what's happening all over the place. But what we have here is what is kind of an enigma for us, because this is very high-grade base metal mineralization. It's got some silver in there, but very high-grade base metal mineralization, and that's occurring at the top of the system. And then we get into the boiling zone texture, like high-grade gold-silver mineralization, and that's occurring in the bottom of the system here. So it's kind of the reverse of what you would have in a typical epithermal system. And that's where you get your head scratches, and that's where you get your good geologists, that's where you get your Ben Whitings on the ground, that's where you get Jim McDonald's on the ground, and that's where you start to think, okay, what do we have here, and how come nobody could work through it? But for that was the opportunity. So model this thing, figure out where are we in the mineral system, and then test that mineral system. Because of that, because of the modeling, the good work by Jen, the good work by Stephanie, good work by our team in Mexico, we were able to fingerprint ourselves in the mineral system and hit with about 90% accuracy. So again, here you can see these polyphase breccias of beautiful textures. Like I said, if we don't want to make a mine out of it, we should actually make countertops out of this stuff. It's so beautiful. But here's a snapshot into the existing working. So here's all the levels that were mined until about the 1980s, and we've been trying to figure out, these boiling zones that probably were hard to mine back in the day. What do they mean? And it actually meant that there's these principal structures that are controlling mineralization. When we test them way down dip, about 300 meters below the resource estimate, and come back with very good grades. Again, kilogram per ton plus material, well below the resource estimate. So what's our strategy here in Zacatecas? We know that discovery-focused geoscience works. Ben just told you how it worked. I'm sure did miss Jim's presentation, but I'm sure he talked about how it works. You go and you figure out where the best chance of success is within the mineral systems of Mexico. You go and acquire as much of the land as possible. You put together a target. You test that target. You develop an understanding of the mineral system, and then you test the system. You're only going to find mineralization in certain parts of a mineral system, and you go and focus in on that. And we know that discovery-focused geoscience works because it's worked in our district. We know that Mag Silver took from discovery to production a project that looked very similar to a lot of the ones that you're talking to in Mexico. Ground that's nearby a historic working, and when that ground becomes available, you acquire it. And then when that you have the money, you test it. Same thing happened with Fresnillo in 1960 with discovering Santo Niño. Same thing happened with Capstone Cozamin mine on San Ramon, finding the Malanoche footwall vein system, and now they're doubling their production as one of their highest margin operations in their company. And we're fully financed to do that test. We're fully financed to do that work. We have 12 months of capital for runway for ongoing exploration tests, but as well with a resource update on the San Nicasio project. And at the end of the day, doing what I think every project and every junior or mid-sized company should be doing with their asset, and that's adding ounces to an already advanced asset. And I've ran out of time, so we'll talk about Paul later.